to do a speech, and I only usually do short speeches, but I've been hanging out with Colin there as he's doing great work on my bus, and I wanted to write, I'm interested in the deep philosophy of our movement, which is forming at the moment, and the rising mythology of it, and this isn't written to you guys. This is being inspired by the men in this room. I have found this group to be the most inspirational group of all the groups I've met all around Australia, especially the men. But around Australia, I keep getting asked, where are the men? So, while I've been helping Colin with the bus and getting grease on my fingers, I've written this, and it's called Rise, My Silent Brothers, Rise. When I was 3, my Uncle David, who was a living superhero to me, pulled me onto his lap and let me steer his delivery van through the streets of our small town in Wales. And as I giggled, I pissed my pants all over his legs. That is my clearest, earliest memory, and I'm amazed I can still find it. Fortunately, even though I was only a little boy, I'd cleverly filed it under the category called a man. A while later, when I was about 10, my family was picnicking near a waterfall in South Australia. The waterfall had a natural slide, and teenage boys were sliding down it. Then, as we all watched, an excited toddler staggered out onto the rocks and slipped. Chances are he would have slid right over the edge and be lost, but death never got a chance, because as soon as the child fell, several fathers leapt from their picnic blankets and ran over the rocks to grab him. This memory I stored under the category called men. Any of these fathers could have also slipped and been hurt, or worse, an injury that could have put their own family in distress. But did they think about that? No. All of them, motivated to save the child that wasn't theirs, ran into the subcategory in my memory called the protectors. I have loads of these categories and subcategories, but the only man that has his own category is my father. My father is a philosopher and a poet, yet you would never know it, because my father was born to a generation of silent men who taught him to keep all his poetry in his head. Every day he walks up a hill near his home in WA and sits on a log I call the altar of Red Church Hill, and he watches Perth wake up. I wrote a poem in which I hoped that one day the Fremantle doctor, a wind, would blow all his poetry out of his head and across the country into my head. He is to me a foundation that I can never live up to, a mountain I could never climb, an ocean I can never swim across nor reach its floor. Now he's spending his last days caring for my mother as she deteriorates first, and he does so with the humility, humour and the dependability of a stone that has a heart full of love. Before COVID, I was talking to my dad, and we got talking about society's current view of men, and he stopped and said, "Now I'm the enemy." We live in a time where our questions are many and unanswered, and our souls are constantly flabbergasted. It's like some weird reality show slipped out of our TVs and invaded our reality. Yesterday, I was watching a man complaining that although his baby had latched onto his nipple, he wasn't as yet producing milk. Then there's Putin threatening nuclear war, the ever-rising price of food, financial collapse, economic ruin, climate change, and of course, vaccines work and it's for your health. Come and get your booster. But I've been wondering if the reason the COVID cloud found it so easy to smother us was because the powers that be had already disempowered our men. When I was growing up, women's toilets were off-ground, or as we used to call it when in grade 1 we played kiss chasey, barleys. Now I often have women complaining to me that they no longer have a toilet in the city for themselves. To me, If you ask most men, they would agree to call the ladies' toilets for what they are, sacred ground for women's business. When you're out this summer with a few friends and the girls go to the pub, you know you have time to get another beer or two. When I was growing up, many pubs had men-only sections, but I feel these spaces were often challenged by women. But I'm okay with female-only places. For I feel women should have their own places where they can go and do whatever, and at the same time I know that the mental health of men of this country would benefit if they had places too that only men could go. Time to unwind, time to be laughed at or laugh at another male while never being judged or judging. A place to be with your brothers who will heal you as you heal them without any woke psychologist ever comprehending how they're doing it. I don't get it. They don't talk. They just whinge, talk big and joke. But that is not true. The language of men is subtle and learned. It's spoken in the form of barely imperceptible nods, in an altering of tone, in cuss words used to convey affection, and in their ability to conceal more trauma than one soul should ever be allowed to bear in nothing other than silence. This is some of my learned mythology of men. But now, thanks to the reactions of my brothers in these last few years, I am questioning it, a lot of it. Never in my time have I experienced such a level of compliance. I have seen and heard men who have previously questioned everything, telling me that sometimes you just don't question, you just do. At first, I managed to process this by seeing these men as soldiers who saw COVID as the enemy. The mask was their weapon, their own houses where they were locked into their trench. They were men fighting to defend their families and their community. I get it. I was briefly caught up in this battle too, until very quickly certain things started not to make sense. And as one thing didn't make sense, suddenly nothing started to make sense. Suddenly I was locked up and watching as all our liberties were removed without a murmur of resistance. And it was now that I called my father, who lives in Perth, and I asked him what he thought of the unfolding events, and he said with a tone deep in thought, "I think they're intending to kill us." "Me too," I said. "Me too." And we were connected. Then, a short while later, he went and got himself and my mother jabbed. 3 times they cancelled their appointments, but on the 4th time they did it. Since then, I've heard him holding on to these 2 conflicting views in his head, congratulating me one moment on holding out, then urging me to get jabbed in the next breath, for he doesn't want to see me in hospital on a respirator. I didn't realise then how lonely I was becoming, because around me men were doing things I never thought I'd see. Driven by fear, they started ostracising family and friends. Mates who I thought I'd fought in union campaigns with, men who I took for granted were natural-born renegades, not only decided to comply, but they attacked or cut out of their lives anyone who didn't. And no day highlighted the severity of this ostracisation, I can't say that word, like Christmas. To date, Christmas was a day where family members, even those who spent the entire year out of touch, would come together for a few hours like an awkward prayer to the power of love. Last year, in houses decorated with illuminated Christmas trees and crowned by the Star of Bethlehem, love, or to others God was defeated. A few months later, on Anzac Day, the forces of fear defeated God again. As fear, while wearing all our medals of our fathers and our grandfathers, rested its hand on our betrayed heart and smiled. And although many women were part of this too, the tragedy to me was that the men not only allowed this to pass, but glossed over all the blood of those who had fought and died for freedom with 3 words spoken repeatedly and condescendingly, just get jabbed. But another remarkable Christmas day happened in World War I, when along the line, men from both sides emerged from the trenches and played soccer. If you put 100 red ants and 100 black ants in a jar, they will just get on with their ant lives. But if you shake that jar, the red and black ants will attack each other, believing the other side is attacking them. The analogy carries over to all our demographics, blacks and whites, Muslims and Christians, vaccinated and unjabbed. The solution is to pause and try ascertain who is shaking the jar. That Christmas day, on the frozen mud of no man's lands, coated with the broken dreams and blood of their brothers, these men must have realised that they weren't each other's enemy, that they weren't the ones shaking the jar, that was people they'd never met, the rich and the powerful who had never visited these trenches. Back home in their towns and villages, many of these young men probably had women waiting, all of them clutching onto simple dreams of marriage and children as they listened out for the parson turning his bicycle into the street, a telegram of tears tucked into his black pocket. And as these men watched the others kicking the ball and realised that their noble sacrifice was actually a communal betrayal, they would also have realised that they had all the guns. If they wanted, they could have agreed to stop fighting each other there and then, turned their weapons on the generals and gone home. In Russia this happened, though all that went to shit, and I believe the French soldiers also rose up, but not ours. Instead, they got back into the trenches and started fighting and killing and dying all over again. Why? A good friend who initially was on our side to the point of coming on to the early episodes of Cafe Lockdown and calling the pandemic for what it was, vanished for a few weeks. When I finally got hold of him, he had gone out and gotten jabbed. He was almost 60 and his health was great and he didn't need a job for his house was paid off. And all he could say, which was the last time he spoke to me, was, well, I've always had bosses, eventually you have to do what they say. Since then, I have found out his real boss was his sister, who threatened to excommunicate him from his only family, which was her and her 2 kids, which he utterly adored, unless he complied. My son told me, after studying marketing, that if you ever want to convince Australian men to do something they don't want to do, the marketing word they use to manipulate us is now our favourite word: community. Everywhere I've been bar here, I've been asked one question: where are the men? Our men have been duped, given a false enemy to fight, COVID-19, a uniform to don, the mask, and a weapon to fight with, the vaccine. They were given what most men crave, a purpose to their lives: save our community. But I believe it runs deeper than this. For men have been fighting another war for decades, a war aimed directly at them. And they have fought this war silently and with their hands tied behind their backs. If you use the term toxic to describe any other demographic, there would be an uproar. But masculinity, we've had mothers stating how they are retraining their boys not to be rapists. These young men have had to stand up in front of all the girls in their school and apologise for not only being men, but the sins of us, their fathers. The war's real enemy, mature white males. They have even attempted to remove the title man from our language. In universities, you can lose points for using the word man in your essays. This war has been relentless and effective. Its victims, our outrageous male suicide rate, coupled with men who drink or drug themselves to death, as most of the survivors, us, just stay silent. In The Art of War, Sun Tzu argues that the most successful type of war to wage is one where your opponent doesn't even know he's in a war. Right here, right now, there is a lull in this bullshit COVID show. it is our time to play soccer and ponder as we do who is actually shaking our jar. Now, all through history, these moments have happened. And what they are is a rare point in time where you, my brothers, can choose not to be the number lost in their history, but a member of a movement who came together and redefined and then became history. COVID was an act of marketing genius that blew away all the mythology of this country. Currently, we have no identity, and all our souls are up for grabs. And we have a choice. We can continue to be compliant and let whoever is shaking our jar deeper into totalitarianism, where we will all become a shameful stain in the history of this land, or we can accept the responsibility of our communal destiny and not only take back our beloved country and our God-given freedoms, but give to them the future. Our reward for achieving this is we will get to leave this realm able to call ourselves men. I believe there is a God. What form he takes, or even if he has a gender, I don't know. But what I do know is that you were not born to be slaves. You were born to be you. The tested heroes that one day the sons of our sons will celebrate. History is not written. It's a decision. And right now that decision is ours and crucial. That's why I implore you, not just for the future or for the present, but for yourselves. Shrug off this long marketing more and men and join us and your brave women as together we fight our way back to where we once again can sing a national anthem without its words being, as they are now, a lie. The end.